Welcome to the Marquis Masters Podcast. I'm Ryan Estes. And today we're diving into a problem every parent, teacher, and leader feels right now. Attention is collapsing, curiosity is under attack, and kids are growing up in a world that's engineered to distract them. My guest, Joan Gillman, an educator at the Browning School in New York City, an all-boys independent school founded in 1888 with a mission to develop men of intellect and integrity guided by four core values: curiosity, honesty, dignity, and purpose. In this interview, Joan breaks down how you can actually teach dignity in a room full of energetic boys, using unforgettable, hands-on projects like building bridges strong enough to hold 4 elephants. They're launching rockets on the NYC sidewalk, simulating oil spill cleanups, and even bringing Mars into the classroom, with mind-melting comparisons like Olympus Mons being over 3 times taller than Mount Everest. This episode is for parents, educators, school teachers, and anyone who cares about building resilient, curious humans. Because Joan's been doing it for over 4 decades, and she's still learning, still evolving, and still lighting up classrooms. For more stories like this, go explore MarquisWho'sWho.com. It's basically a rabbit hole of remarkable humans doing real work in the real world. And if you want the full universe behind these conversations, MarquisWho'sWho.com is where the trail continues. And hey, if this episode earns a spot in your brain, leave a review like you're handing a gold star to your favorite teacher. Specific, enthusiastic, and slightly dramatic. And now my conversation with Joan Gillman. Joan, welcome to the Marquis Masters Podcast series. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for inviting me as well.
It's an absolute honor and pleasure to be speaking to an educator, and I can't wait to learn more about your work. So as an introduction, give us kind of an overview of your career, who you serve, and how you do it.
Presently, I'm teaching at the Browning School. This is an all-boys independent school in New York City, dating back to 1888. Its mission is to create men of intellect and integrity so they can contribute positively to the world. They have 4 guiding values that we constantly incorporate into our classes, which is curiosity, honesty, dignity, and purpose. And it's not just there as 4 principles. The students, the staff, the teachers are always reminded of them. Wonderful school. It's a K-12 school, though this is the first year they've now housed the high school in a new building because enrollment has really gone up. But I love teaching there. I teach lower and middle school science. So I have 4 second grades, 2 fourth grades, 2nd and 6th grade. I'm a 7th grade advisor. And then I run the green team. That's our environmental group from kindergarten through 8th grade. And that's continued into the high school with another teacher there.
Incredible. And do you have a favorite age group?
Oh my gosh, that is an extremely hard question to answer because I truly love teaching and I can find something I love in each age group that I teach. So it's very hard to say.
Yeah, I'm interested about the core values. There are curiosity, say them again.
Curiosity, honesty, dignity, and purpose.
Amazing. Talk about dignity. That's kind of unique. Like how do you instill in young boys dignity?
Well, I think it might be best to talk about a project I do with my 2nd graders and how I incorporate that. In 2nd grade, we had this wonderful engineering unit, and we built skyscrapers and bridges. And with the bridges, we learn about beam, arch, truss, cable stay, suspension, and cantilever bridges. They learn about the pros and the cons for each, where they're built and why. And then my students hear the story about the 4 elephants, mommy, daddy, and 2 babies, and they're out for a walk. And somehow the babies get ahead of themselves and cross a bridge. And they turn around and see mommy and daddy on the other side, and they're like, what? And they come across the bridge. And now all 4 have to cross the bridge together. So the students have to build a bridge. They have to choose between those 6 types of bridges that can hold the mass of the 4 elephants. So they're finding the mass of each individual elephant using a balance. Then they add up the total mass. And this is how much the bridge has to handle. So the students need to work in teams because I don't have room for every student to build their own bridge. The parents are wonderful. I send a letter home asking for all these recyclables, boxes and cans and empty toilet paper and paper towel rolls and ribbons. I'm telling you, they really come to the rescue big time. My poor room looks like the great New York City recycling center. And they have to draw in their notebooks which bridge they think is going to be good. They have to work in teams. They have to think of the dignity of others. They need to compromise. They can't all have their way. They need to hear each other, understand the purpose of this assignment. Their curiosity is right there. And they do compromise. They start building it. Uh, they might have some problems here and there. And I do remind them of the phenomenon we use when we start the engineering unit of the Tacoma Narrows bridge disaster. I don't know if you're familiar with that one. This bridge had the nickname Galloping Gertie for a reason. It bounces around. And that bridge eventually, with 40 some odd mile an hour winds, the whole thing swaying in the winds, twisting and turning, the whole thing collapsed. So I remind the students that even professional engineers have failed at times. So they need to understand that. So when our testing day comes and we're going to put all 4 elephants on top of their bridge, I remind everyone again about the dignity, saying, if the bridge does collapse, it's okay. We're going to applaud everyone's efforts. We're not going to make anyone feel badly. Everyone's put a lot of effort into this. They've shown curiosity. They've shown purpose. Even if it fails, we're going to still applaud everyone. We're here not to destroy the dignity of everyone. We're here to celebrate everyone. And as a result, the students really show support for one another. They applaud each other. Usually they all stay up, thank goodness. But even if it didn't, they're there to support their fellow classmates in the process. There's probably a long on that,
Incredible.
but it kind of shows where it comes in.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And I love that. It's because it's recognizing the dignity in others and really the challenge that group projects possess. The outcome is kind of one thing, but how you get there is a big part of it, and kind of using an understanding of your own dignity and that being reflective of what you see in other people to kind of guide perhaps the stability of that project, so to speak. It's interesting because we recently interviewed Steve Jacobs on this podcast, and he's an engineer that builds bridges. And it's so interesting because I was talking about this exact thing of like when I was in science as a kid and, building bridges with popsicle sticks, and like there's something universal about boys and building bridges for some reason. I'm not sure, but maybe you could speak on that. What is it about the creative production and building process that really kind of ignites young boys' minds?
Well, they absolutely love it. Well, first of all, it's hands-on. It's not just sitting there writing notes in a notebook. They're using their hands, their energies to build something that they can see right there before their eyes. What I love also with the engineering unit, especially when we're also doing skyscrapers, we look at from around the world some of the most unusual buildings built, the tallest, the widest, and our students really come from all over the world. And it gives them a chance to celebrate each other's cultures, and they love it. Say, oh my gosh, I recognize that building. My grandmother lives there. I've been in that building. And it gives them a chance to take pride in their culture. And then at the same time, now to start trying to build these buildings themselves. And they just love the hands-on nature. They like getting their hands dirty.
Yeah.
They love painting day because we don't just leave the boxes the way they are in the cables. They get to paint it and they come in absolutely energized with their smocks on, just ready to get all dirty and set to work. They love it. It's this hands-on nature and this building aspect that they love. And one of the funniest things is cleanup time. Sometimes I think they have as much time cleaning the tables afterwards as they have painting it. So, but it's great to see.
Your resume tells people what you do, but it doesn't tell them who you are. That's where Marquis Who's Who comes in. For over a century, Marquis has profiled the world's most accomplished professionals, not just their titles or awards, but the human stories that make them exceptional. Every Marquis listee has a unique journey. The late nights, the breakthroughs, the moments of doubt that led to achievement. It's more than a list of credentials. This is your narrative professionally curated, your personal brand defined and reinforced, and your legacy historically preserved. If you've spent years mastering your craft, this is your chance to put it on record for validation, credibility, and legacy from an industry-recognized authority. Join the thousands of leaders recognized in Marquis Who's Who. To find out more about becoming an honored Marquis Who's Who listee and inspire the next generation with your story, visit marquiswhoswho.com. It seems like it'll become more and more important to be hands-on just so you can get the darn phone out of their hands.
What I love about the Browning School is that as soon as our students come in the morning, they hand in their cell phones. So I don't receive them until they're ready to leave in the afternoon. And I really applaud the efforts of our school to do that because it eliminates what could be a huge distraction.
100%. Now, you've taught through multiple eras of education, and education is amazing because it's not static. It's always growing and evolving. So, what did you believe about education in the beginning that you no longer believe today?
Well, when I first started in the South Bronx, I was with a blackboard and chalk, putting notes on the board, having students write it. I had in my heart a feeling that I wanted to do more hands-on learning, but in some of the institutions where I taught, it wasn't as accessible as it is now. Nowadays, you see a lot more of it. A person who had a huge influence on my life was during the time I was working on my master's, actually in teaching the hearing impaired. And I was student teaching at PS 47 Junior High School for the Deaf in Manhattan and working with an amazing lady whom I'm still in contact with 44 years later, who's teaching 7th, 8th, and 9th grade science students who were profoundly deaf. And with students, especially profoundly deaf students, after about 12 years of schooling, they might read on maybe about a 4.3 grade level because they're learning a language they've never heard. And with using sign language, it gives them a language base. So here we are trying to get across complex scientific principles, potential, kinetic energy, and electronics ideas. And her idea was to go ahead and build a model of an amusement park with working rides and attractions. So here we are building a big roller coaster, exploring potential, gravitational energy, kinetic energy. We're using pulleys for a gondola ride, connecting circuits for other movement of attractions. And the students would come in the morning, wouldn't even need instructions. They knew exactly what to do. They would take the materials and get right down to work. And I'm thinking, this is the way to learn. Here we are. These students understand these complex principles. They're not, filling in the circles on a standardized test. They're using their knowledge and building. And I thought, wow, this hands-on learning is something I'm going to really want to try to incorporate in my own teaching career. So it really started back then.
It seems like it really speaks to that curiosity angle too. When my kids were little, I really try to instill that, like, it's not like life happens when you're outside of school and that that's somehow differentiated, but rather that like your whole life, if you're lucky, is about exploring and cultivating that curiosity.
I think back with my fourth graders, we do a whole astronomy unit and we get into rocket building. And what kid does not like to build rockets, especially boys? And we are given certain constraints and variables they have to work with. These are straw rockets, so the straw has to be between 10 and 20 centimeters, 2 to 5 fins, a nose plate cone that's not wider than 2 centimeters, and then 3 launch angles that they use on this pit skull rocket launcher. So the students draw the rocket in their notebooks, put in the measurements, even name their rocket, choose their launch angles, and then we head outside to 62nd Street in New York City on the sidewalk, waiting for a day with no wind, as I call that the variable that must not be named. and avoiding baby carriages, dog walkers, and all. We have the students launch the rocket 3 times. We have a big measuring tape out. We take the measurements, and then we head inside to see which ones flew the furthest, which did not do so well, went up and then right down, and we analyze it. And with that knowledge, the students get a chance to redesign their rocket and try again. And I love this particular activity because it's not left with failure. That's it. Let's move on to the next thing. No, it's let's learn from the mistakes and let's see what happened. And in almost 100% of the cases, the students go out a second time, and lo and behold, their rocket really flies much better. And I love this chance to explore, to learn from mistakes, and go on.
Incredible. Yeah, I loved the model rockets as a kid. You know, it seems like New York City presents a unique challenge largely because there's so many tall buildings all over the place. Do you have any near misses with those rockets?
Well, as I tell the student, if it aims wrong and it winds up on top of a car going down the street, I'd rather have a squashed rocket than a squashed kid, and we're just gonna have to leave it at that. We've had some rockets head down towards the cellar because it wasn't laying straight, but we had a few get stuck in a tree with 60 seconds straight. But it happens.
Amazing. What are some of the strengths of having an all boys school, and what are some of the challenges that presents?
Well, the one thing is that there's no distraction from the girls, especially as they head into middle school. They can concentrate on their learning and not be trying to impress the girl next to them or something like that or get their attention. So you have that without that. Challenge teaching in old boys school, just think of perpetual motion. These boys are big wigglers, they are constantly in movement. It's just very natural that way. And what I find I love with them is just their enthusiasm for learning. You know.
Yeah. And you know that kind of ties into kind of the inquiry based learning, you know, and maybe it fits in there with all the wiggles. You know, if you're talking about a 45-minute, 60-minute class period, like how do you approach that kind of length when maybe the attention span for at least me when I was in fourth grade was changing every
Yeah,
10
you can't
seconds?
have a student sitting there for 45 minutes taking notes. It's not going to work. You need to have a class with a variety of activities. You might have some writing. You might show a video on something they're learning about on the smartboard. You might pass out materials for them to explore and perhaps do a small experiment. You need a variety of activities to keep the students' attention. You can't just 45 minutes of note taking. It didn't work for us growing up. It certainly doesn't work for the students nowadays, especially with like instantaneous gratification with phones and computers and all. So there is a challenge that way.
Yeah. And kind of reading about your work, it's cool because big projects come up, you know, whether it's building bridges and Mars and space comes in your work a lot. What is it about Mars that makes it kind of a perfect teaching device?
I was really fortunate to take 3 classes down at the NASA Goddard Space Flight Agency down in Greenbelt, Maryland. I actually saw the James Webb Telescope being built there. It was amazing. Um, what I found, the one course that was on Mars was absolutely an eye opener because we were given all of these cards that showed Mars features, and we were supposed to match them up with Earth's features. And the similarities are amazing, except everything is on a grand scale on Mars. And this is really comes as a shocker to the students. You'll take Olympic Mons, which is the largest volcano in our solar system. It's over 3 times higher than Mount Everest. Their Grand Canyon makes our Grand Canyon look wimpy, wimpy, wimpy in terms of size. So for the students, we do a matching of Earth. We have cards that they have to match up. Just doing that comparison and then hearing of how much grander some of these surface features on Mars is just an eye opener. And the students kind of gasp and like go, "Oh wow, I can't believe all of that." And it's really quite interesting. We've In that course I took, wondered, well, what happened to Mars' atmosphere, and it turns out that the solar wind for all these billions of years has been sweeping away their atmosphere. Because at one time, Mars was much more Earth-like, and now it's kind of red and dead, as they say.
Yeah. It's cool, and it's the way you teach it, it seems to inspire wonder and awe, which seems to be the best gateway for STEM as a career. Ultimately, as we get more specialized, our work gets much smaller and smaller, but to start with that amazing wonder is incredible. What is your kind of approach to teaching STEM fields, teaching science? How has that evolved over time?
Well, I very much have been a believer in interdisciplinary education, and that's where we take all the major disciplines and we combine them into a project or an assignment. Because really, uh, this is the way real life is. We don't have everything compartmentalized in real life. We have, we're doing math skills when we go to the supermarket. We're using estimation skills, trying to figure out what time we're going to get up in the morning, or using measurement skills when we're cooking. So trying to combine all the disciplines, I find, makes learning much more meaningful, and they see the connection between the different disciplines. One of the things I love is when we're learning about constellations. And so often the students, hear about all the Greek myths. Well, I love them to explore Native American stories. We look at ones from Arabia, from the Celts, from Wales, from Australia, and compare them. And the students actually use some of their artistry. They design their own constellation using black paper and stars, and then write a constellation myth that explains the origins of their constellation. So that right away they're using artistry, they're using writing skills. We've looked at history, looking at the different myths that have been written. And we also learn about stars and um, how a star is born and look at the science behind it as well. But it's combining all of the subjects together.
Beautiful. And what I love about that too is it makes any entry point truly like a place that you can be inspired by learning. So if you're into football, you can learn about math through football. If you're into ballet, you can learn about music through ballet. Truly, it's such a gift you're giving these students of allowing them to have a framework to see how they can really develop what's important to them and discover the whole world through that
It
portal.
reminds me when a number of years ago we were learning about natural disasters in sixth grade. So they were challenged to make a presentation that explains to the public what to do in case of these natural disasters. And I left it kind of open ended. I'm not a believer in this one size fits all type of curriculum. I like the students to try to find the method or way that works best for them. So I had some students doing a PSA, a public service announcement, and actually filming it. They composed it, wrote it, and filmed it, explaining what to do for natural disasters. Another group came up as a talk show, as though they were a talk show host, and asked questions from the people on the panel. Another boy made a board game, kind of like a Monopoly game. You spun the dice, one number of spaces, out came a card, and gave them a scenario, and they had to explain what to do if that was what was happening in their area. And some people making diorama scenes, showing what to do for each natural disaster. PowerPoint presentations came in. But I love that they could find the medium that works best for them. And at the same time, be able
Yeah.
to explain it to their classmates about what to do for each natural disaster. It was not like memorizing the facts for a test and then answering it that way. They took ownership of the material, and I really love that.
Yeah. And speaking of interdisciplinary, you're a musician and you play violin, I believe. Tell me a little
Well,
bit
I
about
grew
that.
up playing piano, classical piano. At age 15, I actually got a job playing piano professionally, doing the accompaniment for ballet classes. And that actually led me into doing a lot of ballet dancing and performing, which I today I miss it today. Unfortunately, my tendons have other other challenges for me. But the violin came about very late in life. In my previous school, they offered free string lessons to the teachers and staff. And my first year there, I said, well, how am I going to take up a new instrument? I'm new in the school. Second year, I said, what the heck, I'll take violin. So they had a group lesson with cellists, violinists, maybe a violist. And somehow I took to it like a duck takes to water, maybe because of my piano background. And within 6 to 8 weeks, he was throwing me into the school orchestra. And I still remember that first rehearsal, and I'm playing my violin, and suddenly it hits me, oh my God, I'm playing with an orchestra, and tears start to well up in my eyes. It was quite emotional. By the end of the year, the uh, instructor said, you should be studying with a cello teacher, not a violin teacher. So someone recommended a lady in my area, and she was extraordinarily busy. I was only able to take a few lessons with her, but discovered they had given me the wrong size bows, 3/4 and not full, so I needed to learn now how to use a full-size bow. Summer went by. I'm back at school with that group lesson, and then another person recommended a lady who was just 5 minutes from my house by car, and started studying with this wonderful woman, and made immense and huge progress in acquiring the skills with my instrument. And after about 3 3/4 years, one of my neighbors heard that they needed violinists for the Bergen Philharmonic Orchestra. And this is an orchestra that my mom and dad used to take me when I was a little kid, not dreaming I'm going to play with them one day. And sure enough, I go to rehearsal. The conductor was absolutely wonderful, and I was not thrown out. And I wound up playing with the Bergen Philharmonic Orchestra. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm playing with people who've been playing 30, 40 years, and here I'm still a newbie. The violist in that orchestra was the conductor for the North Jersey Symphony, and then he asked me to join North Jersey Symphony. So now I'm in another orchestra. By the end of that second year, the flutist who plays in both says, oh, by the way, we need violinists for the August Symphony Orchestra. This is a summer orchestra. So then I wound up in a third orchestra, never dreaming this would ever happen to me at all. But I absolutely love playing. Sometimes I find I'm the weekend warrior because my school schedule is very demanding, and I also have those orchestra rehearsals Monday and Wednesday nights. I wound up doing my best practicing over the weekends. But I love it. It brings joy to me, but it also brings joy to the people who are in the audience, and that's very important.
Amazing. Joan, Einstein was famous for playing the violin as well. What is it about science and violin that seems like peanut butter and jelly?
Not really sure. Maybe it's the bit of the science on how you get high notes and low notes, where depending on the width of the string, it will vary how fast it's going to vibrate and give you a different tone. The thinner strings will vibrate quicker. You're going to have a higher tone. The thicker strings are going to vibrate more slowly and give you a lower note. Maybe it's something about that, the science behind that as well. It was interesting in my previous school with our school orchestra, the bass player also played as well, a horn instrument, was the science teacher there in the high school. So maybe there is something with music and science.
Do you have a favorite
Oh my
composer?
goodness. I do like Dvorak, Mozart, um, Beethoven. I mean, there, there's so many different ones that I really like.
Yeah, I've always been like Eric Satie and uh, Debussy.
Okay.
Is it pronounced
Debussy, yeah,
Debussy?
I do happen to like Debussy as well very much.
Yeah. Debussy. I've always been a little bit insecure about saying it out loud because I was like, I don't think it's Debussy. So Debussy. Yeah, feel much better. I appreciate
Hopefully.
that. Now, you were recognized as a top educator recently. What do you think outsiders misunderstand about what makes a teacher truly great?
Sometimes I think that they don't realize the amount of work that happens outside of school. They're thinking, oh, 9 to 3, then you're free all afternoon. I come home and I may be looking through papers and correcting and contacting parents till maybe 9:30 at night. Um, Weekends off? Not really. I'm working on lesson plans. Um, Summers? Oh, whole summer free. No, every summer I'm taking professional development courses. I'm constantly learning. If I froze my learning after I started teaching over 43 years ago, I could not do what I'm doing today. I think people don't realize that teachers are constantly improving their craft. They're really supposed to be lifelong learners, just as I try to instill that in my students. I try to instill that by modeling that type of behavior for my students. I've taken so many courses over the years. Every year at the American Museum of Natural History, I've had classes on climate change, animals, you name it. They've been absolutely excellent. I took two courses up at the Cornell Ornithology Lab
Yeah.
back in probably about 8 years, maybe it's about 9 years ago. I was one of 12 teachers selected to do this global weather test program out in Colorado. And I got to field test a brand new weather and climate curriculum with my sixth graders. What could be better than that? Because I absolutely love studying weather and climate. In 2018, I went through the National Geographic educator certification program. And that was amazing in itself. One of the things we had to do was prepare a capstone video showing how we teach. So I chose something I do on oil spills and updated all of my information and wound up filming our oil spill cleanup simulation. And that was quite amazing. The students read about oil spills, they hear how difficult they are to clean up, but they don't fully understand what it means to clean up an oil spill. So using not petroleum oil, but vegetable oil, I coat a shell with oil to stand for the sea life, a feather to stand for the birds, and then a container of sand that I pour oil into and I mix it. And their job is to remove all of the oil. They're given a tray with regular soap, Dove soap, strainers, screen, towels, trying to think what else, cotton balls, and they have to work as a team, come up with a strategy, and then try to clean everything out. Probably the easiest for them is the shell, and then comes the feather. But boy, when it comes to the sand, that is an absolute fiasco. Trying to use that with water and strainers and all. And they'll come, oh, Miss Gillman, it's clean, it's clean. So I do like the white glove test. Still shiny. No. And by the end, when they finally remove just about all the oil out of the sand, instead of having this much sand, they have about this much left. But it's a lesson that they take to heart, and it's something they're going to remember a lifetime when they realize just how difficult it is to get that oil out of sand. And this is vegetable oil, not petroleum oil. And I can thank going through that National Geographic certification process for making this a part of my curriculum. And it's such a great learning opportunity for the students.
Yeah, kids seem to be naturally compassionate to the environment and animals.
Oh, absolutely. For that reason, I love being the teacher leader for the Green Team. That's our environmental group, K-8. And it's continued with another teacher in the high school building. And this is wonderful. I have students as young as kindergarten joining, as old as 8th grade in my school, and they meet every Monday morning at 7:30. And you would be shocked when we decide to do a Central Park cleanup. You'd be shocked how many students and parents will show up at 7:25 on a Monday morning. Can't wait to get out and clean up the garbage. And They love it. I
Yeah.
mean, we have found, of course, cans, tons of cigarette butts, whatever. The most unusual thing we ever found was part of a lobster. You figure on that,
Part
part
of a
of a
lobster.
lobster. We have found unusual things, but that one takes the cake. But not only that, our green team as a group will decide on our green action of the week sign. So they're posted on every floor in the school. So it could be 1 week, use both sides of the paper, recycle correctly. Right now for the holidays, it's remember to recycle your wrapping paper. And
Yeah.
I remember one week it was use less plastic, and one of the teachers felt very guilty because he had a plastic package of with a plastic fork, knife, and spoon, and every floor he kept seeing use less plastic, and he told me he felt very guilty about it. So that everyone's reading these signs, and it's great. We also plan the biodiversity week with all kinds of challenges for the school to compete in, have guest speakers at our assemblies. But one of the best things they do is our fundraiser for environmental causes or disasters. Just this past fall, with Hurricane Melissa devastating Jamaica, we are reading about how 90,000 families lost their homes and everything. And my students sat there and said, oh my gosh, we have to do something about it. So we made announcements at assemblies, notes went home to parents, and we ran a fundraiser for 4 days. The students all volunteering to collect money in our hallways as the school opens, and then a bake sale at the end of the week on Friday. Everything sold out. I think we had more
Wow.
food, more would have been bought up as well. But we broke all records at $2,300.32, which shows the passion these students have for fundraising. And the money got divided between two organizations that we had researched that are really on the ground helping the people in Jamaica. I couldn't have been prouder of my students doing this. They were great.
That's incredible. And I know that you have a soft place in your heart for the Natural Resources Defense Council as well. Maybe give them a little shout out and talk about
Oh,
what they
they're a
do.
wonderful group. They're right there trying to help the United States uh, defend our Clean Air Act, our Clean Water Act, protect endangered species. They're right there on the ground, also going to court to make sure that these laws are enforced and not watered down. They're a great group.
Yeah, and they've been at it for more than 50 years, and I'll just give a couple of shout outs to because they've got some big numbers and it really should be celebrated. So 369 billion of US federal investment in energy, climate, and justice, 2 trillions of gasoline, 2 trillion gallons of gasoline saved since 1975 thanks to federal clean transportation rules and on and on. So, big shout out to the NRDC for keeping us clean and safe and healthy. I love it. Now, Joan, I have prepared a little game that I want to play with you, if that's okay. What it is, it's called Quick Time, and it's a this or that. You have to choose one or the other, even if you want to say both or neither, so we can start to learn a little bit more about how you make
All
decisions.
right, give it a try.
All right. Okay. Here's the first one, and they're this or that. Okay. So Mars rover mission or deep ocean expedition.
Deep ocean exploration.
Any particular
We have
reason?
explored more in space than we have right here of the deep sea. We know less about what's in our own oceans than we do know that's up in the heavens.
Okay. Build a bridge or simulate a hurricane.
Build a bridge and then allow people to get from one place to the other.
Yeah, how would you simulate a hurricane anyway? You'd need like a pretty big fan and maybe a hose. I'm not
I've
sure.
seen where they've simulated uh, they call it the storm surge, where they've done it computerized, where they show a house on an area that's not too high up and what would happen with a storm surge at different hurricane levels, like category 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and how much of the house would be ruined. And then they show it at on a higher land and what would happen. So they've been doing a lot of computer simulations of that.
Cool. Cool. Okay. One perfect lab repeated and refined, or a new and novel lab every week.
Oh my gosh, you really got me there. It's great to do a new novel lab every week, but if you're not learning from it and not seeing what needs to be improved, I'm not sure about that.
Fair enough. Grades as feedback or grades as motivation?
Grades is feedback, definitely.
Talk about that a little bit. What's your take on
Well,
grades?
they're okay, but if there's no information given about the grade, if there's just a grade there and there's no explanation for it of why that student received it, it has no meaning to that child, and they will not understand what they need to do to improve in their skills or their work habits.
Love it. Nature journaling or data dashboards?
What do you mean by data dashboards exactly?
Data dashboards, maybe more of spreadsheets and projections, or nature journaling would maybe when I see as like sketchbooking.
They both have value, but you are going to need that data as well to make wise decisions.
Microscopes or telescopes?
I like, well, I love using microscopes presently. I'm really partial to that. I'm just thinking when we're learning about tardigrades as one of the most unbelievably unbelievable animals that can survive in almost any type of environment, for students to be able to actually see the tardigrades is just immensely important for them. You can read about it, hear about it, but then to actually see it, it's just great.
Microscopes now, like there's all these like really cool and pretty inexpensive cameras that you can use and just plug into your computer. And as a designer, I was using it for years. Kind of became obsessed with like feathers because when you look at a feather under a microscope, it's like the most incredible mechanics you've ever seen. Particularly like owl feathers. They're so soft and they zip so perfectly together. Like the symmetry and the mathematics of the small world is so cool.
Oh gosh, I can think of just using microscopes for the first time with my second graders, and it just their eyes just get wide open, and they just are amazed at what they see. Even taking a piece of soap, a bubble, and looking at the symmetry in
Ooh,
that, it just oh my gosh, just hearing the excitement mount in the classroom is makes you as a teacher so proud to be in this profession.
so fun. Yeah, my kids, probably like a lot of kids, collected sands from the beaches we went to or different shells, and so looking at the sands from a beach and like it might just be like, pale tan sand and it all looks the same, but under the microscope, they're totally unique. It's
I
pretty
remember
incredible.
with the tardigrade, they had learned about how when conditions are not right, they kind of curl up into what they call a ton. So one of the uh, tardigrades that we put under the microscope at that point had been in a ton, and as we watered it, we slowly saw it come back to life, and it was like, wow, we've read about this, and now we're
Yeah.
seeing it right before our own eyes. I mean, they're amazing. They've survived the vacuum of space and have come back to reproduce. They can repair damaged DNA. They've gone into toxic waste and come out fine. They've experienced absolute zero and still were alive. I mean, they're just an amazing,
Incredible.
amazing creature.
Okay. Fail fast experiments or slow, careful proofs.
Can you repeat that one more time?
Fail fast experiments or slow, careful
I think maybe I'm
proofs.
going to go slow, careful proofs. Because, I mean, a fast experiment that's just going to not work each time. You're not going to really have the data you want. And I will go with the slower one.
Teach climate through numbers or teach climate through stories.
I think both. I know you said you can't do that, but I would definitely want to do both. The stories are important to show how it's affecting people, or even my own stories talking about climate change. I can remember I've grown up in my current home since I was a year old, And I could remember growing up that by the time Halloween would arrive, there would be barely a leaf left on the trees. And now you have to go past Thanksgiving for that to happen. And just telling my own personal
Yeah.
stories makes it come alive for the students.
Violin practice or science lab?
Well, because I am a teacher and I need to get materials done for my class. I'm going to have to first prepare the lab and then get to my violin practice.
Nice. I love it. It's still kind of breaking the rules, but you're a rebel. I'm used to it at this point. You're gonna break the rules of the game and do it your way. I love it. Okay, couple more questions here in the lightning round. If you could meet one person, living or past, who would it be and
Oh, I
why?
would say Sally Ride. She was the first female astronaut into space. She really was a trailblazer for women. And I would want to ask her what her how did she go about getting success like this to enable NASA to allow a female astronaut to head into space, and how did you become the first to do it? She really was a
Yeah,
trailblazer for all the women who came after her. I also like her
agreed.
name, Sally Ride. Right.
Right. And when I was growing up too, astronauts really were the rock stars. It's great to see the commitment of going back to the moon that NASA's got coming in 2026 and perhaps looking into Mars, because that era was just
Oh,
so
yes,
exciting.
it definitely was. With my fourth graders, we learn a lot about the history of NASA. And one of the things we do is, after learning about the Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, and space shuttle programs, and then beyond, we actually watch Apollo 13. And, the longer I teach, the less students actually know what had occurred in this film. And they have to watch it pretending that they're a news reporter living at the time of the disaster, which they don't know about yet. And they have to write a news article about it. And oh my gosh, the students years later remember this film. Uh, it's one of the classes where when I have to turn off the video because the class time is over, you hear groans like, "No, you can't stop now." It is so amazingly interesting. Um, One of the
Yeah.
things that surprises the students when I begin teaching about the history of NASA, we look at the 7 original Mercury astronauts, and I say to the students, "What's missing?" And they're thinking, okay, where are their spacesuits? They don't have oxygen tanks. It takes them a while to realize there was no diversity at all during the early years of NASA. And there comes our history. We talk about how NASA required astronauts to be an officer in the Air Force, and how it was they were not taking women and people with diversity at that time. So it's a hard lesson for them to hear, and takes to the space shuttle program till things look much more like it does right now in the United States.
Yeah, 100%. It was lack of diversity, speaking kind of racially, ethnically, gender, sexual orientation, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Took a long time for that to
Yeah,
change because they look at the
100%.
Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, no diversity whatsoever. And even the students watching Apollo 13 and looking at mission control, all men. And yet during
100%.
the Mercury program, you hear about. I didn't know about this until Hidden Figures came out about the contributions of Katherine Johnson, and where John Glenn could never have made it up into space without her mathematical genius and her ability to decide, angle of entry and everything else.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And having a daughter, who's always been interested in business and STEM, and I've had the pleasure of working with dozens and dozens and dozens of unbelievably creative, dynamic women in science and technology. And in the past, where there might have been like intentional barriers put in front of women, we seem to have eliminated that pretty well. But where I think we still have room to improve is making women feel welcome in science, tech, and technology, and in business in these places, and really kind of creating an atmosphere where they can be successful. It's interesting because you're working with all boys and being a woman, obviously. How do you kind of instill in your students kind of the ability to roll out the welcome for women in STEM?
Well, I think seeing a woman teaching science is absolutely the best ever because they can see that a woman can have all of this scientific knowledge and know-how and be successful. So I think I'm really a role model for the women out there. And hopefully students
I
will
agree.
then respect women even more when they see them later in life.
100%. I totally agree. If you could start your career again, would you make any other changes? Would you make any changes or do something
Well, I
differently?
think I would have liked to have taken more classes on how best to reach the needs of those who are have learning difficulties. Uh,
Hmm.
I had some courses in it, but I think I would have liked even more. So it would have been, especially in my earlier years, easier to reach the needs of those students who maybe were struggling academically.
Yeah. I thought you were going to say play the violin earlier. You could you could have had a whole career getting swept away in like a bluegrass band or something.
Oh, that sounds like fun.
That sounds like fun. Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Throughout the course of your career as a whole, as well as your personal life, what would you say is the most important lesson you've learned?
Oh, I would definitely say be a lifelong learner. Constantly being up,
Yeah.
taking courses, upping your craft. Don't be stagnant. I
Yeah.
find that I go to a lot of conferences, the NSTA, SCONIC, STEM Teachers New York, Stannis. I just was there a few months ago. I love absolutely teaching teachers what I do with my classes because you have teachers coming there who might be starting to get burnt out without ideas, and I love to try to bring back that spark they had when they first began teaching. But on top of that, I love taking classes right in the conferences, so I can also up my craft as well and learn new techniques.
Kind of wrapping up here. Yankees or
Yankees.
Mets? Nice. Jets or Giants?
Oh, I'm not really a football fan, but maybe I'll go with Giants. But I grew up with an older
Amazing.
brother who was a Yankee fan, so of course. But I'll be honest with you, if the Mets are doing well, I'm going to cheer them on as loudly as possible.
I appreciate that. Last question here. How have you benefited from the products and services of Marquis
Oh
Who's
my
Who?
goodness. I've been working with a wonderful woman at Marquis for over a decade. Am I allowed to mention her name?
Sure. Yeah,
Susan
please.
Tyson, who has provided me with opportunities to have my story told in innumerable publications from Vanity Fair, Wall Street Journal, Forbes magazine, and also have videos taken as well. And it's enabled me to spread my love of teaching to other people and hear what I do. So, Susan Tyson's been just an absolute godsend to me.
Incredible. Joan, this has been such a treat. Thank you for joining me on the Marquis Masters
Well,
podcast
thank you for
series.
having me on here and wishing you a happy 2026.